Hey guys, today we are talking about foreign affairs that occurred underneath JFK. Cool. Our objective question today, what major foreign events occurred during JFK's presidency? So there's so many things that happened underneath JFK. We've got his domestic stuff, we have his election and him defeating Richard Nixon, and then we have all these foreign things. So I decided to split it up so we could have, smaller days, smaller bite-sized chunks. So let's talk about the foreign affairs that occurred underneath JFK. So one thing that's going to occur, 1959, Cuba is going to become a communist country, and this really scares us. Cuba's this red little country right here. It's 90 miles from the tip of Florida, so way close to us. Basically communism in our backyard, and that freaks us out. The man who comes to power with this communist regime is a man named Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro is obviously a communist dictator. He's going to be in power for a very long time, 49 years, almost half a century. This man is going to be in control of a communist Cuba. And this is really freaking us out because it's communism really close to us. Up until this point, yeah, there was communism in the Soviet Union, and there was communism in Eastern Europe, and then there was communism in China, and then there was communism in North Korea, right? But all those things are, in the grand scheme of things, relatively far away from us, and we've always had a buffer of at least an ocean to keep us separated from it. But now we have a country that is very close, within 100 miles of the United States, that has now fallen to communism. And remember the domino theory, the idea that when one country falls, the rest do. We're very afraid that now within our own hemisphere, more and more people are going to fall to communism. So this freaks us out. One thing that we do, kind of in response to this, is that the CIA starts training Cuban exiles to invade Cuba. So Cuban exiles, these are people who are Cuban, who were from Cuba, who were exiled, who were cast out. They're now in America. And underneath Eisenhower, remember the president before JFK, the CIA has been training them. And they've been, arming them, and they've been working drills on them, and eventually the plan is to have these Cuban exiles invade Cuba, right, overthrow Castro, and get rid of the communist regime. That's the plan, okay? That's been the plan for a while, but they're not ready yet. And when Eisenhower hands over his the presidency, right, to JFK, he says, listen, I've got this thing going on with the CIA. It's really top secret. Nobody knows about it. It will work, but they need more time. They're not ready yet. And then JFK goes, oh, I get it. Wink. And Eisenhower goes, no, there's no winks. It's not time. Don't do it yet. They're not ready. And JFK goes, oh, okay, I get it. Wink. Eisenhower says, stop winking at me. This is getting weird, right? Eisenhower leaves. JFK takes the presidency, and he goes, you know what would be so cool? I would be so popular if this went down well. We're really starting to get freaked out about the communists. Maybe we should, say, yeah, let's go. And that's exactly what he does. JFK is going to okay the mission. He's going to say, yes, the exiles are ready. We're going to send them into Cuba. They are going to overthrow Castro, and then Cuba will be free, right? That's the plan. But after the, ships and stuff sail out with the exiles and stuff, JFK starts to second guess his decision. He starts to say, I don't know, Eisenhower kind of told me they weren't ready, and now I'm afraid that it will fail. What do I do? And what he ends up deciding is to cancel the air support. This is a critical mistake because without the air support that the United States is going to provide, we were basically sending them into, the frying pan, right? They absolutely flounder. The Cuban exiles, without American air support to back them up, are not going to be successful. And in fact, they're going to be captured by the communist regime in Cuba and imprisoned. And this is a huge embarrassment for the United States because Castro is basically holding up all these exiles saying, America, did you have something to do with this? And they're like kind of wagging in our face, and we're saying, no, I don't know where those people came from. I don't know where. Well, they have American weapons. I don't know anything about that, right? And it's a huge embarrassment. It's very clear that the United States was behind this and that it absolutely failed. In fact, the United States is going to end up spending $53 million freeing the exiles from Cuba. So a huge failure, and it shows that, well, to many people, it looks like JFK might not be ready to lead the nation in this way. He seems to have already failed at his first attempt to, do anything cool. Also going on, the Berlin Wall. We mentioned this when we did our intro to the Cold War. It just made sense to kind of talk about it then because Berlin is divided and stuff like that. But chronologically, this is the time period it's occurring in. A lot of people are fleeing the communist Eastern Berlin for the West, right? Because they'd rather live under the free, nice side led by, the United States, France, and England instead of the communist side. But this upsets the communists. They're losing millions and millions of workers. This is, kind of a bummer. And eventually Khrushchev says, that's it. All the Allied nations get out of Berlin. Berlin is a part of our portion of Germany. We should get it totally. And when the other people say no, they say, that's okay, we'll build a wall. And they literally brick in the communists and they keep people from escaping. And the Berlin Wall is a physical example of how divided Europe and the Cold War actually is. Right. Also going on, of course, the most infamous event, second most infamous event of JFK's presidency is the Cuban Missile Crisis. So Cuba's communist, despite our best efforts, right? The Bay of Pigs has failed. I forgot to mention the reason it's called the Bay of... I'm so sorry. The reason it's called the Bay of Pigs is because that's the area we were going to invade. That's the area where the exiles entered Cuba, just in case you were confused there. Sorry. Cuba is communist, right? And as we're flying spy planes over Cuba to try to, see what's going on, we realize that the Soviets are actually building missile sites in Cuba. And this is terrifying for us because if they launch a missile from Cuba, right, whether it's the Soviets or the Cubans, right, if they were to launch a missile from that location, they could hit pretty much any major United States city, which is this map down here is great, right? From Cuba, they can get, New York, Washington, all these major cities. We are now within, launching area of something potentially, super, super devastating. In response to our discovery that there were missiles in Cuba, Kennedy is going to order a blockade, and he's going to demand that the missiles are removed. This is a really, really stressful time for Americans. And if you know anyone who was alive during 1962 and old enough to remember, I'm pretty sure they can tell you exactly how they felt when they realized this was happening, and that really, really tense week or two where it seemed like there was a chance that it was finally going to hit the fan. A lot of people were concerned that at any moment, right, the nuclear war that everyone was terrified of would happen. Because remember, it's mutual assured destruction. If the Soviets launch a missile at us, we're obviously going to launch some back, and they're going to retaliate with 2 more, and we're going to retaliate with 3 more because we're America, right? And it's going to go back and forth, and eventually we're all going to just be smoldering in ashes. This is not good. We cannot have a nuclear war. We don't want to. But we also can't back down, right? Because this is brinkmanship. So we're literally going toe-to-toe with the Soviets via Cuba, and we're staring at each other, trying to figure out exactly how this is going to end. Now, after a week of back and forth between Khrushchev and Kennedy, they end up striking a deal. And what history has kind of neglected to mention, especially U.S. history, is that we were doing the same exact thing with our missiles in Turkey. There was a lot of our missiles pointing right at the Soviets at pretty much the same close range. And Khrushchev is saying, well, if the missiles in Cuba make you uncomfortable, the ones in Turkey make us uncomfortable. Why don't we just agree to kind of back down? And there was some, political maneuvering because we technically kind of weren't supposed to have the missiles in Turkey. It was a big thing. But anyway, we ended up, talking everything out, and the Soviets removed the missiles. This was a huge win for JFK. He has diplomatically gone toe-to-toe with Khrushchev, and in the American mindset, he won, right? The Cubans end up, losing their missiles, and it looks like an American win. This is great. Holocaust, or nuclear holocaust, averted. Great. Also, another little nice part of JFK's presidency is also the development of the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps was volunteers who get together and they go to these third world countries and they volunteer and they build, schools and churches and help bring running water and stuff like that. It's what a lot of the hippies do. If my family's listening, they know that we always joked that my sister, Olivia, was going to join the Peace Corps, right? But it's a very important agency, and it's still in existence today, and it's one of JFK's really important legacies of his term, so that's nice. And then the sadness, right? The most infamous event in JFK's presidency was his assassination, of course. Despite warnings that Texas was very, very much anti-JFK, he decided to visit Dallas, Texas specifically. He's in a parade, and as they near a building called the textbook dispensary or depository, excuse me, over here, he's going to be shot. And there's a lot of debate over how many bullets and how it all happened, but what we need to know is that JFK ends up dying, and he dies very soon after. Very sad. If we had a bunch of time, I would love to go down the rabbit hole with you guys with all the conspiracy theories, but sadly we don't have time. The official account is what matters, and this is the official account right here. This man, Lee Harvey Oswald, remember the the assassins always have three names, right? Lee Harvey Oswald is the man who assassinates JFK. We decide as a country that he worked alone. As he's being transported a few days later, he's actually shot and killed on live TV by a man named Jack Ruby. One of the reasons there's so much, conspiracy around this is, why did Jack Ruby do it? Was he helping cover a secret? Was he working for the mob, right? There's a lot of questioning, but long story short, right, Lee Harvey Oswald assassinates JFK. And remember, when a president is assassinated, the vice president becomes president. So this is Lyndon Baines Johnson, who is sworn into office on Air Force One with Jackie Kennedy, JFK's wife, standing right next to him. He takes the oath of office, and he is now president of the United States. Here are some images from JFK's funeral. Very infamous picture. He's so cute. Very, very young when this whole thing happened, right? Very sad. If you've been to DC, you've probably seen the eternal flame at JFK's grave. Now, legacy of JFK and what his presidency brought us. Yesterday we talked about a lot of change domestically. One of the most important pieces of JFK's legacy is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Technically, it's passed after he's assassinated, so it's technically passed during Lyndon Baines Johnson's, or LBJ's, administration. However, he wants everybody to know, LBJ says, listen, this is Kennedy's legacy. This is what Kennedy fought for and helped pass during his presidency. Let him go down in history as the person who achieves this. So that's really important. Also, the Kennedy curse continues on after JFK is assassinated. Later on, his brother Bobby, or Robert Kennedy, was actually won the Democratic nomination for president, but was actually assassinated a few years later. So really tough there. There's JFK and his brothers. Once again, if we were in class, we would go down the rabbit hole about the Kennedy curse. It's awesome. Go ahead and look it up on Wikipedia. It's amazing how many of these poor guys ended up dying in plane crashes. If I were them, I'd just stay away from planes. But all right, very long story, not very short. Make sure to answer your objective questions. I will see you later. Bye-bye.